Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 8.6. Okay, been doing some in-between episodes, micromanagement, and as we sort of know here, the British are busy running. The AI at some point figured out that it was time to get out, and because they started to pull out of provinces along here even before I attacked them, so it wasn't like, oop, we're retreating, we're out. I think it was when we cut some of the supply lines here, the AI realized they weren't going to supply the full force here. Now, thinking of that, and I know talking from the previous episode about the idea of what would it be like to play a human, I know by now, long before now, the British player would have put forces into South Africa or Southern Africa. Let's presume, for the moment, Italy and Germany combined was able to get in here and take Tanganyika, which I think is quite reasonable. But if we look at the infrastructure here, it gets pretty poor, and I've actually built this up a little bit, and pretty long, that had you put in, I don't know, 4 or 5 good divisions, we would be getting a stalemate somewhere around here. I really do believe that, or maybe even up in here. So that would be a difference, instead of seeing South Africa go. And of course we would, because we see all of these divisions stacked up here that are dealing with the Italians. If you were just, I don't know, take 10 of the better divisions, another 10, after 4 or 5, and stick them in here, somewhere in India, because you'd be seeing, oops, the Germans, the Italians could be coming for us, by the time you take Saudi Arabia, the end of the peninsula here. And then, of course, we'd be seeing the Americans reinforcing all of these areas. South Africa, India. It would have been different. Very different. Just some thoughts. Okay, well, let's continue this. Right, so we're winning in West Africa. Oh, good. Okay, you're here. You're doing well, so you come in through to Freetown and Sierra Leone today. Sierra Leone. Okay, we won there. Want to deny them ports. More events. Looks like, okay, reorganize the war ministry. We're getting recruitment time. Money, well, we're doing fairly well with money, aren't we? Okay, mega alright right now with money. So we don't need more money. Parliamentary issue, national revolt risk. That's what we're going to do. We have a 20% chance of messing this up, but an 80% chance of doing it well. Hopefully that works out well. No, we don't really need coal right now. We don't need food rationing, which is supplies. Antonescu, well, that's repeating. It shouldn't keep repeating every month. Formed the 117th Jaeger Division. Was formed April 1st, 1943 by reorganizing and redesignating the 717th Infantry Division. It was stationed in Greece and guarded the Peloponnese until summer 44. It took part in the withdrawal through the Balkans and suffered heavy losses during fighting with partisans. In September, it ended the war on the Eastern Front and surrendered to the U.S. Army in Austria. And of course, you don't know, this is the Peloponnese, this peninsula there. Yeah, we'll take it. Did it show up down here? No. Okay, where is it? Oh, we are. Ah, okay, well, Let's give it a commander. Somebody who's... Yeah, okay, you look reasonably set for that. We're not going to be having historical trouble of needing to mess around in here. Our internal security type forces are doing just fine. Maintaining control there. Okay, let's see. You come down. I'll cancel. Landing craft flotillas have advanced. Good. That will increase the range. It's part of the reason big reason why I did that. And that will increase it, what, another 100 kilometers. Yeah, we're going to continue that. Be able to reach out a bit further. Single engine aircraft. Maneuverability focus. That is... No, just this one and done. Okay, good. That will help all of our fighter types. And another outbreak of nasty partisanness. And Russia. Have more tech. Okay, let's see. Oh, one that was one and done, yeah. Let's continue our naval improvement. Cruiser crew training. Got a fair amount of those, so yeah, let's... And we have a fair amount of officers here, so what we're gonna do here is... Oh, and... fair amount of diplomatic influence. Okay, so let's come to technology here. Research. We're going to reduce this down. Let's reduce it all the way down to about 30, because we're just not burning through officers. Just not having the combat losses. Remember, one of the big things, well, I think there's a couple things. One, I do believe the order of, and this is a belief and no real knowledge or no real certainty on this. The order that subunits of a division are in, the sort of stacking order, if you will, from top to bottom, does matter on combat losses. I do believe it's so. And by sticking the division headquarters up to the top, and we do, well, I don't do that, but the different modders, including the Black Ice team, do that so that the divisional symbols, the cool ones, are seen. I do think means that we have more officer losses than if it was at the bottom. I believe that. I don't know if anyone's done that testing for sure, but I do believe that. Two, that I'm particularly, but I think a lot of people reinforce the core, particularly, but also the Army headquarters, and put them into the front lines, and those have lots of officers in them and take very high officer casualties. So that is a thing. Okay. We've got lots of free spies. We don't need so many. So let's reduce this down just a little bit. I may want to thinking I'm going to add a few more spies. Now, diplomats. We've got lots of diplomats. We got more than we need, so let's reduce this down a little bit too. Not hugely, but some of the nations that we were influencing we no longer are, like Saudi Arabia and Iran. Okay, so that now jumps us up heavily in leadership for Training. Well, we can do carrier crew. We don't want to lose carriers. They're expensive and hard to build. Cruiser warfare. Yeah, that's nice, but let's see. Yeah, we'll do that. Got a lot of those small vessels as well. Yeah, we got more light cruisers, so we'll do that. I think that looks good for the moment there. Let's... Several things we could be doing there. I think some of these 43-year date strategies would be good. Assault concentration, defense and depth. Sniper warfare, that. Okay, that works. Hedgehog defense, I don't think, well, useful, but I don't think we're going to do that right now. And we've got 1.14 things left. So amphibious unit training, commando training. Let's do some commando unit training here. Got various commandos spread out everywhere. And let's come up here and make sure we've got, oh, whatever that was for a while. Consumer goods, I don't know. Junker school service by requirement. I don't know, something went off the thing or some benefit went away. Okay, well, whatever. We're back to that, and we're doing that. We'll take what comes for the production needs. We've got plenty of ICs, not that we couldn't do with more, but we've got plenty. Do at least what we need. Okay, you're moving fast, aren't you? Okay, well, you rush through the mountains, through the capital. See if we can end this war quickly. Okay. In response to the pro-Axis Iraqi rebellion and strategic potential of the Second African Front, Adolf Hitler is compelled to send German assistance in the form of aircraft and personnel to the rebels. This was made official when Adolf Hitler ordered Führer Director 30, which stated the Arab Freedom Movement is our natural ally against England in the Middle East. In this context, the uprising in Iraq is of special importance. This strengthens the forces hostile to England in the Middle East and beyond. It disrupts the English communications and ties up troops and shipping. Yes. Okay. So we can lose some supplies, 5,000. We can afford that. And we'll gain a little national, and they'll get an event that will give them some more Luftwaffe support. Or, yeah, we'll go with that. That seems to me worth it. They already have a lot of aircraft, surprisingly. But yay, much more than they can support on their air bases. I'm not quite sure why they don't build more other than just the AI. Okay, Fug 220 Liechtenstein SN2. By late 43, the Luftwaffe was starting to deploy the greatly improved Fug 220 Liechtenstein SN2, operating at a lower frequency of 900 megahertz, lower than the usual US VHF FM broadcast band, which was far less affected by electronic jamming, but this required a much larger stag antlers. Okay, we're going to go with that, and I presume they mean all these little exposed things. I find it very interesting, and as we noted, and I hadn't heard before the event, and this is why I really like playing some of these events. And yeah, say I hadn't heard, maybe they mentioned it on great show, Wings of the Luftwaffe. I think you can find it on YouTube and other sources. And there's other Wings shows, episodes covering other aircraft, but Wings of the Luftwaffe, really good. I think I've watched all the episodes. I know I've watched some of the episodes more than once. I mean, I say I think because maybe there's one aircraft, because they normally look at like an aircraft at a time for an hour episode. There may be one episode or something, one episode aircraft that I've just missed somehow, but I've watched a lot of them. Again, I'm not an aircraft expert, but yeah, I've watched some stuff, and I don't remember them ever talking about a Luftwaffe radar night fighter type aircraft defecting to Britain. I know of other things happened, but didn't know of that. So that's why I really like playing some of these mods, because I learned stuff. But just the interesting thing is the Germans are using all of these extraneous or external or whatever, and they're not, external antennas as part of their radar, is either sending or receiving elements. Where the American setup is, at least mostly, is from everything, is a single sort of sending and receiving dish, and which I find that interesting, because both of these systems are classified. I don't know, obviously the Germans at some point know the defected aircraft. I presume they know, as opposed to presume it was shot down. But and so how much can you hide, from, no one ever take a photo, no one ever publish a photo of all these extra stuff mounted on the radars, and sort of the different and competing technologies that both are using. I find that interesting. They're trying to do the same thing but through different paths. So just sort of interesting. Antennas with only 8 dipole elements, looking like a much enlarged version of what occupied the forward end of each one of the earlier quadrupled masts. Improvements by early 44 led to the newer SN2 version with a lower minimum range, which allowed the older UHF radar system to be removed entirely. In July 44, the newest version of the SN2 radar fell into Allied hands when fully equipped Ju-88 G1 of 7th Stoffel flew the wrong way and landed on a landing beacon, and landed in England by accident. Okay, so that was an accidental landing. I have to wonder what the hell the pilots would have thought. Oh, okay, yeah, we're flying in. Okay, there's the airbase, there's the airbase. No one's shooting at them, presumably, because they're not attacking and they're coming in on approach radar, and so I'm going to guess, presumably, the airbase thinks that it's some allied type fighter that may be, not responding to, radio messages on the, that they're just on the wrong frequency and from a different base, and just coming in for a landing and you land, and okay, yeah, there's the runway. It's all lit up, presumably. Land. Everybody gets out of the airplane and looks around and go, oops. That's gotta be like, oh shit. How did we do this? I just have to wonder, how did you do that? Now, I do know orientation at night in the dark, flying around, if you've done any maneuvers, you could really lose your orientation, and maybe they just didn't, with all that, just didn't read their instruments well enough. This led to successful jamming of several frequency bands of the 220 and partial adoption of use of the low to mid band Neptune radar, but several other bands that the SUs were still operational. After the Allied jamming, FU antenna was optimized for the still operational bands. The 90-degree vertical duple pole setup was changed to a 45-degree diagonal setup. Okay, so keep playing around with it, trying to improve it. Yes, we will add to the research. Okay, aviation search radar. I want to look at that before we click it. Is that aviation search radar? I'll click that there. Okay, we already have that much. So let's cancel it right on the O. I just want to see. Make sure. See here? There we go. So now we are here. So we could, of course, push ahead, but I'm going to choose not to because we are up to pretty good standard already. But keep in mind, if you want to wait a bit before putting some of the effort into it, you can get some bonuses. And I totally agree, like and support, shall we say, well-educated, well-researched, however you want to put it, events that give historical type boosts, because I'll go with, there's been talk and thought that research isn't this click here in X number of days we will have research completed, or the Hearts of Iron 4, which is in essence the same thing. It just I like here that these are, you know, gradual approach. It's not radios or no radios. It's improvements to the efficiency, to elements of things. I wish I can see getting rid of all of this, and I've talked about that before, and then having this then, if it's just purely research and you don't get to judge between, you know, shift between officers, diplomacy, and research. This, in essence, just becomes the slot system of Hearts of Iron 4. I know it's sort of impacted some people the wrong way. Now, they've just simplified it compared to god-awful, or I don't god-awful, but get highly detailed and whatnot of Black Ice. So, fewer slots, but it's just like fixing, okay, you've got 60 slots, or 30 slots, or whatever it is. Pick your slots and go down through it. But what I like is here is that it's not do we know the Blitzkrieg Doctrine or not? Yes or no. That's basically how it is right now. And I don't know, again, I can say this, I don't know what the developers are thinking. I know when they played one of the early versions of Black Ice, they were a little surprised. I could tell by their reaction, at least Podcat was, because he hadn't seen it. One of the other guys had played a little of Black Ice before demonstrating it, because they don't look at all the mods. Partially because there's a lot of them there and it takes time. I also think it's maybe an intellectual property question, because a few people have said, hey, this is, so you've copied what I've done. And they go, no, we didn't even know about it. Sorry. You know, and I believe them when they're saying it, because they seem to be upfront about most things about like that. Because they have said, we have gotten ideas from, they normally do their own implementation, not just copy and paste, but gotten ideas from other things. And they've sort of kind of said and stated things at times. But, you know, so that they're sort of aware to some degree of Black Ice. And when they got to the tactical doctrines for it, oh, they haven't changed this. Okay, because they'd seen how much they changed everything else. And Black Ice still hasn't changed it. And I think Panzeru probably, if you were to ask him, yeah, he's planning on changing it at some point. But it's just been low priority. It's okay now. Let's do other things first, if you will. And so they noted that the Black Ice and most of the other people hadn't changed the doctrine tree. I would like them to have, and I do sort of like the idea of at least some technology, some doctrines as well as other technologies, be dependent upon earlier ones. Meaning instead of here's 6 options, you can start researching all 6 at once or pick which one. Sometimes you got to get the basic down, then you can do this, and then you can do that, and maybe sometimes, I don't know whether the grand battle plan really should be, because this is sort of like the French idea of it, planning big battles, planning everything out, should be mutually exclusive with Blitzkrieg doctrine, because you can plan everything out, but then have all the plans, but then be flexible once you do it. But then you could argue, no, this is the inflexible style. I don't know. But, that's a real good debatable question, I would say. And yes, I'm debating with myself as I'm talking here. But the idea of a deep battle doctrine, to me, is sort of the Blitzkrieg, if you will, because it's... The Blitzkrieg, as I look at it, is a catchy way, because the Germans didn't even sort of say this at first. Blitzkrieg, that was sort of the English, I think, calling it that. I think later on, they did sort of colloquially adopt it. But it's the combined arms approach. It's that not just like, and sometimes even late in the war, they wanted to, late in the war, the Battle of the Bulge, whatever the German, forgetting the term right now, or the operation for that term. But that offensive, the initial planners, von Rundstedt or whoever, was talking about, well, we're going to have the infantry divisions attack here in the center, and then once they make the breach, then we're sending the panzer divisions through. That's really that late in the war. We're talking Christmas time, 1944. So they have the institutional memory from 1939 Poland all the way through there, spread out, and von Rundstedt, if I'm not mistaken, was more or less still in charge of that front, though I could be mistaken on that. And I don't know exactly who's coming up with the plans. And this is from some readings I do, I remember vaguely about a long time ago, so I forget even by who, by like a German general that was writing about this after the war in some of his meetings. That they wanted to, big artillery barrages of the infantry divisions, attack, make a breakthrough. Once you break through, then send the panzers through, rushing to, achieve your goals. And they're like, what? Because the problem with that is multiple-fold. And I know that the thought is that, they were coming through, the Ardennes forest again. It's... there's Bastogne, which is, of course, a familiar name, but that they're going to come through here and move through this rugged terrain, not just on the roads, but move through the rugged terrain. Infantry is going to do much better at dealing with roadblocks and, limited traverse elements going down a few roads, because they can inflate, flank units that are holding the roads, and they can move through this way, and they got a fair amount of artillery, and they can blast all the sort of fortified positions, or entrenched positions maybe would be a more correct term, and so they can do all of that very well, and that's quite true. And then do that with the infantry divisions, but then the fresh, because they were very worried about fuel, and that could be part of the thought. But also, fresh as in not tired. The soldiers aren't tired. Fresh as in the units that have recently been built up don't have any more combat losses, both men and equipment. Fresh as in those artillery shell stocks for the more mobile artillery units are full. All of that kind of stuff. I get the idea fresh, that then once you have the breakthrough, they rush fresh and deep. The problem with that is sort of twofold. One is the coordination between the two, and these are sort of overlapping between the two sets of commands, because you sort of have to divide them up between the infantry assault breakthrough and then the once you've broken through, the sort of cavalry type pursuit into the rear, into the deep battle doctrine thing. But the big thing is the literal road jam, because you have the roads, the limited amount of roads in this part of the world, but this is also anywhere. I'm sure you've watched the movie Patton at some time in your life, and you have him out there in the one episode playing traffic cop, literally out there. You go, trying to, because there's two U.S. divisions or whatever, trying to use two different roads, but they, for the movie, they, cross. And so who goes first? Who has a priority? And so he literally gets out there and sorts it and plays traffic cop, gets that sort of rhythm going because he's the corps commander. He can do it. No one's arguing with him. No generals, or whether they're two generals or two majors from two different divisions arguing who has it. No one's arguing with Patton. Gets it going. And then, of course, somebody else takes over, and once everybody goes, okay, this is what the general wants, they'll follow whoever can, play the traffic cop. But it's that kind of thing. But even if they're an autobahn or highly developed roads, you have a lot of supply needs. I know I've talked earlier about the fuel setup of where they had fuel, continuous supply of fuel of German advancing motorized units for the Fall-Gelb invasion in 1940. You have these trucks that are going, having to deliver fuel up there, and then turning around and driving back along a path to get more fuel, more ammo, while you have other trucks driving, or tanks, or armored, half tracks, or whatever, driving fresh units, not new supplies up, but fresh units along with supplies coming up for the units that are already forward. So you've got all this traffic going back and forth. Some of it's only going forward because trucks carrying troops that are motorized trucks, they're going to stay with the unit. Once the troops get out and fight, they're going to fight for a bit, then get back in their truck and move forward again, is the idea at least. The supply trucks for the unit, once they're out of supplies, they turn around and go back to some dump somewhere, whether it's a impromptu forward dump that they do, or whether it's all the way back to a main base dump. So you've got this traffic problem. So if you have a bunch of infantry divisions making the breakthrough, they're already jamming the little road, literally the traffic roadblock, if you will, while you need to rapidly move the panzers through. And this is presuming there's even a good condition roads and not winter roads through a forest. So this is, even late in the war, you have this sort of lack of blitzkrieg idea, because the blitzkrieg is the idea that you're using an infantry assault, you're using an armored assault, and then, as they already knew it, but as they got more and more of them, an armored infantry assault, because those are actually sort of kind of different things. An infantry assault is can be motorized or can be unmotorized, but it's get your troops up and they're on foot and they go and assault the enemy. You could be crawling, stormtrooper from World War I, like, at night before the attack, trying to get up as close before dawn to the enemy to jump into the enemy's trenches or foxholes or whatever, surprise them up there. Or it could be running across an open field while your machine guns at a, good covering position try to pin the enemy down, and you're assaulting the enemy. The armored infantry assault is that you're advancing, maneuvering rapidly in an armored way, and hopefully getting in, because if you're coming against a well-prepared enemy, and if they have like 50 caliber machine guns, 50 caliber machine gun, generally speaking, will go inside of, or through the armor on one side of the half track and out the armor on the other side of the half track. A good American Browning 50 cal will do that. So unless it's deflected or whatever, but the armor just isn't thick enough to stop it, because that's in essence an anti-tank machine gun. But you have that and other bazookas and other things else. So if you try to use an armored infantry assault against a well-prepared unit, now of course if you can put enough fire, whether it's direct fire or artillery, mortars, heavy artillery, you can pin somebody down. But also the idea with the armored infantry is that it's supposed to be moving rapidly through the battlefield, and before the enemy is fully prepared, before the enemy is placed machine guns with good overlapping fire and all this stuff, spend a couple hours setting up a defensive position. If it's a hasty defense, you're coming in with armored troops coming in there's a little rubber bit on a standard. I don't know if it lasted through to the MP40, but the MP38 up by the barrel has a little rubber rest point built into it, and that's meant to balance on the. And this is why it goes back to, and I've had discussions with Panzeroo over the historically correctness of having armored infantry, units earlier than when they did these guys, because he says, yeah, but they really didn't show up until later, 41 or whatever for the invasion. Yes, Panzeroo, Black Ice creator, you're right about that, but I've got photos of them training, and published in magazines, and he goes, yeah, it's propaganda, but published in magazines in like 1938, for these guys that look like they're attacking entrenched positions in a training scenario. There's nobody in the entrenched positions, but it looks like that's what they're doing, as not just as a headquarters or armored reconnaissance thing. So they were training in 38, and the MP38 has this little rubber rest that's meant to rest the edge of the barrel right on the edge of the armor there, and this is built into all the MP38s, so you can be in your half track and rest it there, and it's rubber, so it's going to deal with the vibration of the machine gun and the vibration of the vehicle and not hurt either one, and do suppressive fire from inside the half track. Not worth it to do it with a bolt action rifle. So it's using your submachine guns at submachine gun range from inside your half track, firing out. This was done in 38. Panzeroo is absolutely right that production of the MOAG type, this is the 250, the 251 is the reconnaissance type, the sort of the shorter one, sort of reconnaissance, but it's a fighting reconnaissance type unit. They didn't have enough of them in 41 and you can find like the famous photo of Guderian in the back of one of these with an Enigma machine and a bunch of other communications. It's a command operation version of, or just, they've stuck a bunch of command equipment, radio equipment into the back of the standard stuff. That was used in France for the invasion of France. They're rarer. My idea or statement is that they had the vehicles fully researched, one, and two, they were effectively doing the tactical research and training procedures to get them down by about 38, but their production numbers weren't high. So my argument is with him is that you should allow, or you have the technology researchable early, but it's up to the player to go, do I want to build a lot of half tracks with my military ICs, or do I want to build a lot of aircraft? And do I want to win the war? It should be a limited situation, because and I don't know we're talking about this, but I hope it's interesting. Game design and kind of thing, because we are having these discussions, and it does filter to some degree into the developers of Hearts of Iron 4 when you got a mod, because trust me, again, they don't check out every version of Black Ice for Wave 4. I just don't believe they do. And like I said early on, he was sort of Podcat was sort of surprised at some stuff, but they're well aware that it exists and generally what's going on with somebody like Black Ice, because they sort of know that that's sort of the ultimate geek World War II version of Hearts of Iron. They realize that, but they believe, whether they're right or wrong, that is bad for the overall product. If the overall product was that, not that Black Ice is bad, Black Ice fills a niche. They want a bigger audience, is how they look at it. So this all sort of matters in the design philosophy. So my thought is that the production levels. Do you build more tanks to build enough tanks, or do you build half tracks, or do you build more aircraft? Because we don't have specific aircraft factories or specific tank factories. Black Ice sort of contributes to it, but still we're limited to the number of. I presume if you haven't checked out Black Ice, you'll see some of the different truck factories and tank factories that just give bonuses to certain manufacturing. But do I build more truck factories, or do I build more aircraft factories? What do I build more? And that's where the sort of the choice is that if I choose, and it should be an idea of a limited amount of production ability, meaning we can't have it all. We're not America in 44, because I talked about how overproducing they were of things. We have to make choices. So if you want to produce huge numbers of armored half-tracks to be ready in 40, you're probably going to be lacking in some other place. Now, fortunately, we now have a divided naval versus military production, as well as civil production. So we can't go, oh, well, do we, because me, when I start out the first 2 years, basically all I sees, other than minimum needs, basically all I sees goes to producing more ICs. It just, that's the way I do this. That's the smart thing. Now with 4, the ICs can go to producing more ICs, or producing military ICs, or producing naval ICs. The standard ICs don't get to go to producing units. So that's divided up. That's good. It's divided between naval and military. That's good. I would have also done an aircraft, but that's very debatable whether you should be able to or not. An engine is an engine to a degree. And I have talked about some of the stuff. And so you can convert aircraft engine production, because I don't think the Germans used rotary engines in tanks, but the Americans certainly did. They used rotary engines in like the Stuart tanks and some of the others instead of the inline sort of engines. So, you can in essence convert aircraft engine production to being tank engine production or truck engine production. So if that's your main bottleneck for aircraft, then they should all be one. If your main bottleneck for aircraft is sort of the aluminum or steel, because there's also some steel with wood and fabric or whatever, frames, if that's where your main bottleneck is, then tank and artillery production factories aren't the same as aircraft factories. So I don't know where the main bottleneck should be, engines or airframes. I know we're going into the weeds here. So I like the divisions up. It's more realistic. It's better. That's one of the reasons why I think, again, Hearts of Iron 4 in the long run will be a better game once we can get it more like this. The other thing is, and I've taken a long time to get here, is I would like to break up, whether it's this kind of style or the, because like I in essence said, this is only really a little more dynamic in the sense of you get more slots when you conquer points with more leadership. And you could easily do a American heavy bombers coming into bomb us at night over somewhere, because you can see we're at night. Oh yeah. As you get more, you can easily have slots added by, I don't know, events or other sorts of things to your production or to your research queue by owning Paris, and remove, because you got the French researchers, and I don't know that the French really helped with the researchers very much, but the Czechs certainly did, and some of the other groups. There was other research help at different times from different captured, but then that's debatable how much you should get. Now I know that unlike here where we got to annex it, and again I'll state this again, I am very against the idea that this is an annexation. I know there is, and we could have gone with the Reich Commissar plan, which would have set them up. My biggest problem with that is, like, I can't even get Iraq, who's housing 26 surplus oil, won't trade with me right now. I know they're not my puppet, they're my ally, but still, they don't need all that extra oil. Is the lack of my personal control over it and distrust of the AI, Yeah, I know they will siphon off, if they're my puppets, a certain percentage of their overage on resources and stuff. But still, because of that lack of control, I really think it should be, what do you call it? We're at peace now. I don't know, create another country here and, you know, a rice protectorate, and then it's occupied by us is what it should be, to force Germany into occupying the territory effectively, and two, depending on its occupation policies, and I know you're mostly all aware of this here, and I don't look at it too much, but here, what sort of occupational government, which dictates how much of the leadership do we get versus how much of the resources we get versus, you know, all of this, so that getting Paris doesn't mean that we have the same level of research that French would, but, you know, so we can debate how much help in conquering it is, but do the slots. But I would also break them up into several big genres. I would definitely move all the doctrine slots away from production type slots, and I would maybe even have air and naval their own separate things, and I would base the slots on various historical levels of schools, of training academies, and all of that kind of stuff. Break that up, and then I don't know, some more breakups here, so that I don't know, guys researching some of these other and developing some of these other techniques don't get to, oh well, I'm gonna move all of my research into producing better aircraft or something like that, to balance it out a little better. Still make choices required, and of course obviously some nations get more slots than others. That's a big thing, and that's how I would do it. So, you know, not just do you have X or Y tactic, technique, radar. Do you know radar or not? No. How good is your radar? Currently, with current dev versions of Boy 4, the radars just basically the additional radars. Oh, you should be connected to. There we go. Is adding more slots to provinces as opposed to making the radars themselves, excuse me, better. Okay, oh, that's the tall boy one and done, if I remember correctly. Yes, did that because it helps some of the heavy bombers. Wasn't really, but this one, logistical bombing, I don't even know if we should bother with some of these big things. High caliber cannons. I just sort of hate, well, okay, see here, what I don't like, well, is that this affects all the heavy fighters, and I don't know how much we need that. Like the specialized ammo here, which is okay, anti-ammunition. Yeah, we'll go with that one. I just don't like the negatives, and I also don't, well, what I do sort of like about the Hearts of Iron 4, and yeah, I know sometimes I sound like a salesman for it. We need to get some of your coastal provinces, so we're going to come down here. Is the idea that I can be having multiple aircraft in production. I can have whether it's of a ground attack version or an air attack. of the same, you know, of the Spitfire, because they did do air attack versions later in the war. Or whether it's to have Hawker Hurricanes as ground attack, multi-role type fighters, and your Spitfires as pure air-to-air combat kind of guys. I like that a little better than the sort of generic. I like that a lot better, in fact, than this generic stuff. This is why I think I agree with most all of you refuseniks out there for we can afford the manpower hit now, which helps our leadership. That's why I didn't do it for so long, because we were running out of that manpower on the Eastern Front. Yeah. With Hearts of Iron 4 is, you know, I agree, I think, with all of your why you don't like Hearts of Iron 4, but it's specialized production, it's all these other great things that just, to me, go, yeah, it's the future. Because we got to get it more like 3 here, more like Black Ice. Okay, create Fortress Politsia. Poletsty? Sorry. German air defenses around Politsy increased in 43, with further and grew into one of the most heavily fortified zones against air attacks within the Axis when the U.S. Army Air Forces resumed their air campaign against the critical strategic target in Politsy. From the air bases in North Africa, the Operation Tidal Wave in August 43, they found to their dismay, I think is what, to their dismay, I think is what that's supposed to be, a well-prepared opponent. Operation Tidal Wave was an air attack by bombers of the United States Army Air Forces based in Libya and southern Italy on 9 oil refineries around Politsy, Romania in August 43. During World War II, it was a strategic bombing mission and part of the oil campaign to deny petroleum-based fuel to the Axis. The mission resulted in no curtailment of overall product output and so deemed unsuccessful. The mission was one of the costliest for the U.S. Army Air Forces in the European theater, with 53 aircraft and 660 air crewmen lost. It was the worst loss ever suffered by the U.S. Air Forces on a single mission, and its date was later referred to as Black Sunday. 5 medals of honor and numerous distinguished service awards were awarded to Operation Tidal Wave crew members. Okay, well, obviously at this point, I don't see a realistic Allied or Soviet or somebody's bombing mission up to here. At least not from the AI. Now, Fortress Politsy, 250 supplies, or no, 2,500 supplies, 2 manpower. How's our manpower? Okay, we're doing good. Officers, again, we're doing well, or no need. I'm just going to do it. It may be a chain of events, but don't really need to. But we've now got better aircraft and some radar here. Sort of the radar that got me to do it. Hey, Revolver Held, if you're watching, and I know, or at least you said you watched some episodes, you're making, I believe it was you who made the really great events to improve those oil fields and some of these other oil fields. What would be really cool is maybe another mission to increase the Ploesty output. But I don't know if it would be historical to be like maxing it out for Germany. Because obviously Germany here, I can't build in this province. So, but Germany did do a lot of stuff, and maybe there's later events, but we're already in 43. but I'm thinking some earlier missions to just improve that a little bit more for oil production. Just the German pays for it. It could even be whoever's making it. Figure out what it would, try to do a little bit of math to figure out what it would cost in supplies. I don't like, and again, I'll say this more and more, and I've used them, but I've used them sort of in my defense mostly in the early game, but is like a % reduction to overall ICs, because yeah, some of these long-term, the Werecrafts, that's sort of pretty good, and the Reichsfuhrer SS, because that would sort of scalable to everything else. But anything over a 1%, because you don't know how big of a actual IC, unless it's a really brief time. If it's like for 30 or 60 days, I'm okay with a like a 2.5 to 5% IC hit, because you don't know whether that's going to be on a base IC of 630, or is that a base IC of 200, or a base IC of 2000. So that's sort of why I like the supply hit, because you can try to measure it and you can try to figure out, well, and obviously it does scale as to how many ICs here, how many ICs does it make to make something, supplies and whatnot, by your different techniques and changes, supply production, not just supply production, but efficiency and all these others affect it. So obviously that's scalable too. But I wouldn't mind things even be like double, figure the average cost of building an oil rig and doubling it or more per oil rig, but not, just, if I could have 2 or 3 more oil rigs there, that would be really nice. For Romania, for me, for whatever. Okay, yes, we'll give you energy for money. Just ideas. And we've won in Iran another battle. Okay, that's not doing so well. Okay, no, there's another unit we can put in. Good. Okay, we've lost the effects, so we've lost the daily descent there. That is good. That is, I knew we were having that. Again, I didn't do that research that just because I was certain for manpower earlier. Okay, interception tactics have advanced. Okay, that's good. We're going to just stop that. Fighter pilot training, yeah, will be useful. And radar has advanced, and I think that's the one that's giving us the red. Yes. Okay, and see, like this does increase radar efficiency as well as provincial AA efficiency, and I like that kind of stuff. Bonuses to the radar, not just we get to stack more and slots in it. I don't know if anyone noticed carefully what I said earlier about the radar in the Hearts of Iron 4 game, but it wouldn't necessarily refer to future things. Okay. Close enough hits. Yeah, we're going to do that eventually, but let's see. And yeah, okay, see, yeah, like I say, we're going to do that eventually, but let's do some of these other tactics to help with beating British and American. Oh, and consumer goods. Yes, that's the lack of propaganda fails, I think. Not absolutely sure. Yes, we've won in Riyadh. So you can come down here. Main thing I was doing was because we're fighting to conquer. I don't know for sure whether Iraqi-occupied provinces will stay with Iraq or not, just the way sometimes this sort of goes. Iraq is trying to... I know these provinces that are going to Iraq right now will turn over to... friendly Iran once Iran is puppeted. But you guys keep moving into there. You're still sort of hurting. You're not going to attack. You're dealing with supply problems. I sort of forgot about this up here. Okay, oh, pause. 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 Okay, well, we're losing another conf group. Damn, oh well. Okay, I sent this big fleet over here. Well, I don't know that I want to risk all of that. I'm with two minds. I'm in the mind of stuffing them all into the one, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Into the one fleet so that you've got more cushion against attacks of any sort. Yes, you want to put on. I think maybe you, but we'll shift you out there. You, I definitely, that's specifically what I think I came over here for. One of the ones I came over here for. That's, oh. That 2 would be nice. We're getting ready for the invasion of, Cape Verde, right? Cape Verde? Or the, what is, oh, the Azores. That's the Azores, I'm getting this right? Yeah, Azores. Or, oh my god, I'm messing this up, aren't I? That's Tenerife. This is... Oh, bloody hell, I'm messing all this up, aren't I? This is Cape Verde, yeah. That would be the Azores. Yeah, I'm getting ready for that. Okay. That looks good. So you come back over here, we'll launch from here and we'll rebase. Now what I want to do here is okay, there's your Legion headquarters. Oh, come on, up there. Okay. So, there we go. I want to put both of you, we're going to send these out to India, might as well. There's a couple of good reasons to do so. One, just immersion. Sort of cool to have the Indian Legion fighting in India. Rebase. But the other is they are colonial light infantry, which should, and I don't know if they're going to get there in time to how much they're going to fight in India, but they're heading there now. They should deal well in some of the terrain in India, and plus after that, now they won't move too fast because of the fascist militia. They don't have a transportation unit, so that's sort of a problem. But they will have the police function, so that will help them as occupation troops post and keep the revolt risk down. Okay, we've won here, good. Aircraft prototype evaluation. That is here. Yes, okay. Cancel that, but now we're going to come over here and fuselage aerodynamics. Be helpful. Okay, Wavis Bay. That was traditionally the part of South Africa, but it was really just this little bit here. Wavis Bay. Wavis Bay was part of South Africa. It is now part of Southwest, or Namibia. But the rest was Southwest Africa. But and I believe even it goes back to the early days. This was an English colony here, surrounded by the Greater German colony. Well, on that note, I think we're going to end the episode here. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank everyone for liking the videos. I really do appreciate that. And of course, you can please post comments, questions, suggestions, ideas, corrections. Do that. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. We want to grow the channel. We want to do wonderful, great things. And if I do wonderful, great things in the dark and nobody knows about it, it's not very good. So we want everyone to see. So thanks so much. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.